Well, good thing you caught it early.
I know, right? We're going to record a whole episode and this happened.
That's rough.
Yeah, it is rough, dude. It's like, oh my God. You got to win job. Hello, world, and welcome to the Ignited Fortitude podcast. This is episode 106. We are in the Armor of God, Armor of Man series. And we've been... Well, we just recorded 7 minutes, and I look down, and I'm like,
I'm supposed to give up the secrets, homie.
Yeah, you know what? It happens, man. You know what? Hey, guess what? Like, I don't have to have this mask that I have it all together, right?
I'm giving you grace.
Hey, so we've been talking about this series of Armor Man versus Armor of God, and how, one of the things that you brought up early on was like, hey, we're in a battle.
Yes.
Like, whether you like it or not, you're in a battle.
Yes, 100%. And
so... we all are. We're all facing some kind of conflict, some kind of adversity, regardless. Like, here's the thing. The Bible tells us that the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking
whom he may devour.
Right? Yes. So if you're not careful, you're going to get snatched up.
Yes, 100.
And so the Apostle Paul is like, hey, you know what? You need to equip yourself. And equip yourself with these pieces of armor as you guide yourself. And, it's real practical language, right? Like, yes. Okay, like if you were going to be a soldier, what would you need? You'd need you need your Kevlar helmet, you would need a flag jacket, you would need, you need all these essential pieces of tools in order for you to fight or to just defend.
Yes.
Right? Hey, if you're going to have to guard, something, there's going to be essential things that you need to have.
Yes.
And so we talked about, like one of the examples, if this is the first time listening, we talked about the belt of truth and versus the belt of my truth, right?
Bathing in that river of denial.
Exactly. Right. Well, it's my truth. No, this is what it is. That's what it is. Like, okay, well, who told you that? Well, I did, of course.
Who told you that?
So, yeah, that's like Adam, right? Like, who told you were naked? Right?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot, yeah. So, so equipping yourself properly, right? This is in Ephesians. It's obviously like a field manual for Christians and to just like practical living in today's world.
Yes.
And so, so we were talking about the essential pieces and how. Go ahead and read where we're at.
Yep. We'll move. I'll read the past ones. Ephesians 6:14. Stand firm, therefore, having girded your loins with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace, in addition to all, because those are the basics, taking up the shield of faith with which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation. That is where we are at. The helmet of salvation.
So you were saying that this is the last piece of...
Yes, this is the last piece of defensive armor. And like when I first read that, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, it's salvation. That's like the first thing. That's what gets us started, gets us going. And then I was reading and the guy's like, well, no, dummy. The assurance of salvation is our impenetrable defense against anything the enemy throws at us. So it's talking about our assurance of our salvation. Because think about all the different things that provides us when you are 100% assured of your salvation.
Yeah. So the opposite, right? And this is what we were talking about before we started recording is like, okay, well, what's your take on the opposite? It was like,
that story.
I was like, well, the mask. And he's like, well, mask. I'm like, well, the mask of hypocrisy. He's like, how do you figure that? And I was like, look, and we talked about this before, when we were at summer camp, we were waiting in line and we were going to go on the leap of faith. And it was superhero day. And I'm just standing in line. The kids are waiting, and we're standing in line. And this one particular kid goes up to the line, and the lady's like, "All right, well, you need to take off your mask." And it was a Batman mask. And he's like, no, I'm Batman. And she's like, that's great. She's like, but you need to take your mask off. He's like, I'm Batman. And she's like, look, Batman, you need to take off your mask. He's like, well, why can't I wear my mask and put the helmet on? And she's like, you can't wear your mask and your helmet at the same time. And for me, it was like, bro, that is exactly, because you're always looking for like awesome. Teaching opportunity lessons, right? Yeah, dude, for sure. I'm like, dude, that is so true, right? And so the mask of hypocrisy. And so like, I read this, and this was a while ago, but check this out. So I'm reading this book, and this is what this guy says. He says the false self, because when we talk about putting a mask on, it's my appearance of what I perceive. I want others to perceive.
It's what you're pushing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it says the false self. Well, here we go. Let me backtrack a little bit. Right. It says our self, those plans to save and protect our inner life, those are the things that will actually destroy us. Proverbs 16:25 says, there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end, it leads to death. The false self, our plan for redemption, seems so right to us. It shields us from pain, secures us a little love and admiration. But the false self is a lie. The whole plan is built on pretense. It's a deadly trap. God loves us too much to leave us there. So he thwarts us in many different ways. So the false self, right? This mask that we portray. What we're essentially doing is we're hiding ourselves behind a persona of what we want others to perceive. Because we have this shame, ultimately is what it is. Yes. Right? We have this shame. And when we have shame, we feel like there is no way I can expose this to anybody, because guess what? Like the reason why we hide those things is because I won't be accepted if people really truly know this about me.
Right.
Right.
It keeps people out of like churches nowadays, right? Like they're like, oh man, there's no way. They won't accept me there. That type of a thing.
Think of, and we talked about this before we started recording, think of Jacob.
Yes.
Jacob, why didn't he just tell his father that he was Jacob? Why?
Because he didn't believe he'd get what he wanted then.
He didn't believe he would be accepted.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He didn't feel like he would be accepted. And that's like, as we look at the Bible, like think of Jesus, right? Jesus gets baptized, and his father, Jesus didn't do anything. Gets baptized, and God's like, this is my son in whom I'm well pleased. Goes into the wilderness and is tempted. And what is the temptation? We've talked about this a bunch of times on the podcast. What is the temptation? If you really are the Son of God, then do this. How many of us, when you were in high school, do you remember? Hey, bro, if you really think you can jump higher or if you can go faster, let's race. Right? And then you do something super, you're like, all right, go. And then you get the jump on it, because there's no way that you want to.
No, you don't want to lose. You don't want to lose face, so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so like the whole idea is, in order for me to prove myself, I need to, do this and this and this and this. And Jesus was so secure with his knowing who he was, knowing whose he was, right? I don't got to do that. Yeah. As a matter of fact, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word, right? And again, using the scriptures in order to combat everything. Because why? Because I know what my identity is. I know who I am. He knew
his authority.
Now, let's fast forward. Let's fast forward to him suffering the trial, suffering the persecution, hanging on the cross. What was it? What was the very same challenges that he was being faced with? The same temptation.
Prove who you are.
If you are the Son of God, then get down from that cross. Right. Dude, right there, he could have been like, let's go. Like you went.
Which is crazy, because him not doing that is the biggest flex ever.
Yeah.
Not. But going instead, you individual who are barking at me right now to get down off the cross and prove it to you who I am, I'm still going to stay up here and do this for you, for your salvation.
I think I heard Tim Keller say this. God told Adam, if you obey me, you won't get hurt.
Correct.
You will save yourself. What are we always trying to do? As man, we're always trying to protect ourselves.
Yes, 100%.
We're always trying to protect ourselves. Yes. So God tells Adam, hey, if you obey me, it's going to go well with you. Okay. All you have to do is just obey. God tells Jesus, if you obey me, you are going to suffer my wrath.
Yes.
If there was anybody that was not going to obey in those two situations, who should have been the one that should not have obeyed?
Yes.
It should have been Jesus, right?
Right. Right.
If we want to talk about self-preservation, because that's what we seek. Yes. But when we talk about salvation, hey, you know what? He was dying for our salvation.
Yes. In obedience to the Father.
Yeah. So when we talk about how do we arm ourselves, right? How do we defend against the enemy and the attacks? Because when we come into situations, what's the first thing that we're going to do? Oh, forget it, dude. That mask comes in, like, let me puff on my chest, show my, you know what I mean? Like, no, you're not going to do. That's ultimately, you just sent me a text earlier, right? You sent me a text earlier this week, right? You're like, hey, you good? I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? You're like, I'm like, no, man, because it's so easy to
default.
Jump. Yeah, it's the default that I go to, right? And that's just honesty in the sense of like, I know.
And others' masks are also like retraction. But whatever your mask is. But yes, your default is definitely flame on.
Well, and you said that, remember when I came back from Pursuit, and you're like, well, you know, what did you take from there or whatever? It's like, bro, like I didn't realize like how much I like fear was a factor for me. And you're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And I was like, bro, like, are you serious? And I'm like, okay, so fear shows up for some people and it keeps them from it. But fear for me is like, no, I'm not going to look like a punk, right? Like prove yourself. Oh, you got this. You know what I mean?
Said that, I was like, oh, that's crazy. I never thought of it like that.
Either way, it's still fear.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's still fear. Yes. And so in order to do certain things, here's the thing. What did, when Cain was trying to offer up this sacrifice. Here's the thing, right? Was he offering a sacrifice?
Yes.
Was it a good sacrifice?
I mean, in our standards, yes, it was. Most people are confident it was his first fruits.
Yeah. So guess what? But guess what? It wasn't a sacrificial offering,
and it was not in accordance with God's will.
Yeah, it was a superficial offering. Yes. Because guess what? Anything that I desire, but the Apostle Paul says it. Hey, I did this, and all those things were filthy rags.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And so, same thing. And guess what? Everything that the Apostle Paul was doing was, by man's standard, was amazing.
Yes. Some miracles.
Yeah. And so, when we look at Cain, that was a superficial offering because it wasn't the sacrifice that God wanted.
No, it was not.
And Cain, here's the problem too. Cain knew it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they all knew it. They know what at that point in time, there was only one sacrifice because it was the first death ever on the earth. Whatever animal God sacrificed for them to be clothed. And I can't imagine. I mean, they probably threw up on themselves. I mean, I don't think people think about this stuff. You know what I mean? Like we would be like, oh yeah, so he sacrificed an animal. No, bro.
There was none of that.
They were in the garden.
Yeah.
There was no death. No. There was no blood. There was no killing. There was no violence. There's none of these shows. There's none of this. He killed and sacrificed an animal to clothe them. No. They must have been just,
could you imagine?
Distraught.
Yeah. Well, and think about it. Like, it probably wasn't some random animal either.
No.
It was probably like that one, like, oh my gosh, look at this. Like,
sorry, there were no random animals because Adam named them all.
True. Right? True.
Bro. But we digress. But still,
but so think about
the gravity. Yes.
Yeah, having to wear that and thinking of little.
So they knew.
You know what I mean?
They had to have known what the sacrifice was required.
And so there you go, right? Like, you can't come to God any other way but His way.
Yes.
you can't come without that sacrifice. And here's the thing for us.
But I don't want to.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, so that's exactly. So when my neighbor, right, when he shared the gospel with me, it was like, well, you know, where are you at in your relationship with Jesus? Like, bro, like I know Jesus. Like, dude, me and him are like this, son, right? Like, ultimately, that's what I was telling him, because it's dude, he did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it's funny, dude, because he's just like, sounds to me like you know about Jesus, but you don't know Jesus, and I'm like, it's like, how dare you, dude? Like, throw this table up right now, right?
That's crazy. It's like having someone ask if you want to be healed, right?
Yeah, dude, for sure. Toes are, kick to the junk. Exactly. But here's the thing. I felt that I was in God's good graces because of all the things that I was doing. Dude, that's why that verse to me hits so hard. And we talked about it in Matthew 7. Many will come to me saying, Lord, Lord. But I will tell them, depart from me, for I never knew you. Because ultimately, that's exactly what I was telling my neighbor. Bro, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And I had no clue.
You're in denial.
Yes. And dude, he like literally just opened his coffee table was right there. And he's like, oh, well, let's just talk about this. He opened up to Isaiah 1. And he's like, hey, you know what? This is what he reads. And he reads like, he's telling the Pharisees, like, all the religious leaders, like, stop your prayers, stop your new moon sacrifices, stop, all your offer, like, stop all these things. And he's like, dude, like, he's telling the priest, stop praying to me. Like, I'm not even going to listen. Like, I'm covering my ears. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, dude. And I'm like, well, what about this? And he's like, oh, well, here's over here.
Like what we were reading about the Pharisee who was praying to himself.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Exactly.
Man. Yeah. Essentially, that's what we're doing, right?
So here's the thing. Like, we ultimately get up in the morning, and there's always something going on. I mean, like, seriously, there's always like some kind of whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, and when you suit up to handle those situations, because we're at war. Like, how are you showing up? And here's the worst part about it, right? Like, the first person you face in the morning is yourself in the mirror.
Most of the time, yeah.
And how many times, if you're honest, dude, you're already suited up in some
junk.
Yeah.
And we should stop calling it like the armor of man, because like technically it's not armor. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's like a costume. It's like a Halloween costume.
I like that.
The costume of man. How about we change it to that? Because that's all it's gonna do. What's a costume gonna do? It ain't gonna stop no bullets.
No, that's like, oh, that's cute.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. It's like you show up you're a cop. And you go rent a police officer Halloween outfit and show up at work in that. See how fast it's like.
That'd be funny.
So you think we're letting you in a car and go out in that?
It's funny.
It's cute. Go get dressed. Go get your stuff on, man.
Yeah.
No, it's not even armor. It's paper thin.
Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the identifiers, right? So what are you like? The easiest one, right, is like, what are you hiding behind? And how are you showing up thinking that you're going right with God? I'll give you an example. We talked about it before, right? King Saul.
Yes.
He's like, oh, Samuel comes. Like, look, Samuel, look at what I did. Like, bro, look at what we did. Look at how great and victorious we are. He's like, what? And what's up bleeding a sheep? We talked about this a couple episodes ago, right?
Yes.
He thought he was right. Saul thought that he was right.
And what was the motivator of why he did what he did?
Because of the people.
His fear.
It's because of the people, yeah.
Yep.
The people wanted to get... And think about this. We were going to offer sacrifices to the Lord. Really? With the sacrifices that he detests, that he didn't want you to keep those.
Right.
But it's always easier. That's why I love that. Like, I think it's 2 Samuel. It's the last chapter in 2 Samuel. David. David goes, all that stuff happened. He took a census, all those, right? Like the people had to suffer the plague and many people died, all that stuff,
Yes.
right? And then it was time for him to offer sacrifices. And he buys the place where the temple's going to be built. And Aruna tells him, oh, it's for the king. King, I'll give you anything. And he's like, I will not sacrifice to the Lord. No, what is it? I will not offer sacrifice to the Lord from that which does not cost me.
Yep.
On the flip side, Saul, on the flip side, Saul was like, I'm going to sacrifice the Lord. And it's so much easier to sacrifice this on somebody else's dime.
Yeah.
Because
100.
ultimately, it wasn't their. Like, hey, we got the fattest of their.
Yes. Yep.
That's like robbing a bank and then putting it in the offering at the church.
Yeah. Giving the Lord his cut. Yeah. And the Lord's like, I didn't help you rob that bank.
Oh yeah, dude, don't bring that here.
Don't put that on me, Ricky Bobby. Yeah. That is a good analogy. That's 100. But why do we do it?
Because that's what the natural man gravitates to.
Protection from fear, protection from rejection,
protection
from a plethora of other things.
I want to protect my image.
Yes.
I don't want anybody to, and here's the thing, like we draw, and again, they're not boundaries. You're literally drawing walls of protection for yourself because you're not going to want to let anybody into that. Dude, like you can't, like you can't function, like you can't function that way. Like you can try.
You can't function positively that way. I know a lot of people. I functioned in that manner for a long time. We're talking decades.
How did that go for you?
Terribly.
Okay, well that's what I'm saying. You can't function properly. Yeah, you
can function there.
Okay, you can't function godly. Right?
No, because we were no way, shape,
here we go.
or form.
Like because in Ephesians it tells us that we're supposed to be imitators of God as dear children.
Yes.
Are you walking in that?
No, not if you do it. No,
not if you're doing that. Right? That's what I'm saying. So it's like, we can say, yeah. Can you do that? Yeah, absolutely. And guess what?
I'm just saying that clarification because some people could watch this and be like, no, I can function in that.
Yeah, and my challenge to you would be that exact same thing, right? Like, oh, so how's that working out for you?
Yeah.
Really, because here's the thing, like, if you're so, again, right, Cain, right? Like I got it all together and it's a superficial offering.
Yes.
Seriously, it's a superficial offering. You're offering what you think you have the best of, that it's going to benefit. You think it's benefiting others, but really all you want it to do, it's benefiting you because you feel good about it.
All right.
And doing that, if you have this appearance, because it tells us in Titus, they had this appearance of looking godly.
Yes.
But their deeds are worthless.
Correct.
Okay. So you have this appearance. So if you're so spiritual and you're so locked onto this, hey, look, I'll tell you right now, when I walked to my neighbor's house and he laid it out for me and he's like, where were you? Oh, I'm good. I'm this and this and that. Dude, my life was a mess. Dude, seriously, my life was a mess at that point. Right. And for most people, right. And even Christians, because we fight this unless we realize what it is. That's why the Apostle Paul has to give us this. If you're so deep and you got so much going on in a manner that you think is in right standings with God, then why is everything else in shambles?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, everything's good. Like my Bible reading time's good. I got that locked in. I got this locked in. My church attendance is good. I got this locked in. And like, okay, like, but how about we have like,
where's your heart?
No, not even that. Let's see your family life.
Oof.
Because that is going to be the direct.
Well, now you're getting personal.
But that's the overflow of that.
100.
Why do you think in Timothy and Titus, when it's looking, hey, when you look at church eldership, when you look at deacons in the church, what do you need to do? How is he at home? Yes. Don't worry about what he's doing at the church.
Because what we oftentimes forget is, the fruits of the Spirit, we always consistently talk about them pouring out onto others, right? Well, that's how the works of the flesh do too. They pour out as well. They're both pouring out. It's just, what's your cup filled with?
100%.
Filled with the fruits of the Spirit or is it filled with works of the flesh?
Yeah.
And then from that, like you just said, not that we're fruit inspectors, but nonetheless, you will know them by their fruits, right? That's straight from the Bible.
Yeah. And think of like spiritual fruit. And we've talked about it before, right? Spiritual fruit. What's in fruit?
Seeds.
And what are the seeds for?
Growth.
And so what grows from those seeds?
More fruit.
More fruit. You get that other fruit, there's no seeds in that.
Yeah, it's rotted.
It's rotted.
Nothing's going to grow from it.
Exactly. And guess what? You have...
And you're possibly going to get sick from it and get others sick.
Well, and check this out. Like, guess what? Those seeds, like if I take a piece of fruit, I cut it and I have seeds, I have seeds to give you. So if I have a family, then I'm able to give to my family, and that's going to produce seeds. If I have fruit that has no seeds in it, and really, like, let's just even go one step on the opposite direction, in the sense of it's artificial. Because like, we get like right now,
then it has no nourishment whatsoever.
Yeah, because guess what? There's fake fruit. Like we should have. It'd probably be good to do like, hey, we have 2 bowls of fruit right here. One's real fruit, one's fake fruit. Can you identify from the land of YouTube? Could you identify which one is? They wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, that's pretty good. No,
Right? Until you pick it up, right, and then bust it open. Well, obviously, when you pick it up, you're gonna know. But let's just say, but once you bust it open, you see what's inside of it.
Yeah.
Same thing for us in our spiritual walk. Hey, you can have the mask on, or you can have the helmet on, but you can't have both at the same time. And that's where it's like, hey, you can't be a carnal Christian.
Yes, very much so. Because it's the whole thing of, so I want to come serve at your church, but I only want to serve the way that I want to serve. You know it's God's church, so he's going to have you serve how he wants you to serve. No, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
Well, then he doesn't want your service.
Yeah. No, dude, pastor's the same thing.
Yes.
Right?
Oof.
Like, whoa, wait a minute. And you can't do it God's way. Even in our,
you mean you can't do it your way?
You can't. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you. You can't do it you have to do it God's way. You can't do it your way. Yes. I can't come to Christ or I can't come to God just any way I want.
We'll just start right there. Yeah, salvation. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. There's no other way.
And here's the thing. There's no partnership.
No.
Right? Like, no, it's either me or nothing. It's not you and me.
Any man should boast.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? And like, I was listening to this Tim Keller right now. Like, it was, well, I don't know if it's right now. It was a while ago, but and he had this thing. I was talking about it, where he was talking about a lot of people have this like religiosity, right, to their Christian walk, and he's like, that's the worst kind. And we know that, right? Like people that are like, oh, I'm really like, it's, okay, because you're using your religion to ultimately serve your God. And so he poses the thing in Jonah, okay, and he talks about how they were on the boat, and guess what happened to all those sailors? We talk about sailors, so like we can already like so. He's like, it says right there that they were praying to their gods.
Yes.
So guess what? They weren't even like vested into it. It's just like, hey, whatever's going to work for me. Right?
Right.
And they were praying to their gods to stop whatever was going on.
Yes.
And he's like, those people, he's like, look, those sailors were being religious. Because what you do in religion is you use God to get what you want. So it's like, hey, if I do this, then God will give me this. Well, you know what? You just identified your God because you're asking God to get you what you really, truly want. That is your God.
Yes. That's so true. Wow. Yeah, that's not good. That's not good at all. But that's very true.
Right. And so like we have to be careful
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go.
We have to be careful with how we suit up, because if we're putting on the wrong things, going back to David fighting Goliath, guess what? The world was going to offer him up armor. Saul was offering up his armor. And guess what? That is the armor of man.
Yeah.
That is the armor of man. David fought against Goliath, not suited up. Any soldier would be like, bro, like,
Pretty sure David walked in there with the shield of faith.
but guess what? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, right? It tells us in Corinthians, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but they are mighty. And I don't remember, like, I'm not even trying to finish that quote, right? But our weapons of warfare are not carnal, just like with David. And he went in there not needing anything, but fully relying. And guess what? Yeah, like you said, right? He had everything right there. Who was he trusting for his salvation? The Lord.
The Lord.
Who was he trusting to protect him and to shield him from everything? The Lord. And guess what?
God's truth, God's righteousness,
Mm-hmm.
God's gospel, faith in God, salvation, a sword of the Spirit, because he threw some words at Goliath. Yes. Yeah.
And to pray.
He came with it. Brought a rock to a sword fight.
And was victorious.
Yes. Poof. Yeah.
So when you get up in the morning, when you get ready to handle business, because that's what it comes down to, right?
Yes. Yes. Go on.
You don't handle it in the way that you think you need to handle it. That's going to protect you. Well, I need to go in there because they need to understand what. No. The moment that you feel like you need to protect yourself is the moment that you're saying, God, I don't need you to protect me. got this.
Yes. 100.
That's a problem. That's right there. That's your indicator.
Yes.
Like, hey, if we were having, we're talking about combat strategies and going to the school of infantry and all this other stuff, right? We would be, these are your tactics. These are the methods. These are your, yep, there you go. Right. And guess what? So here's yours. The moment you start walking into situations and you're heavily on the, I need to do that. They need to, hey, God, help me, protect me, pray.
Yes.
Right. God, what do you want me to do? How am I supposed to handle this? Going back to the truth.
How am I supposed to respond in this situation?
Yeah.
Because most of the time, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with someone or something coming at us, affecting us, right? And can we control that someone or that something?
Can't.
We cannot. But what can we control? We can control this someone or thing. And in that control of ourselves, how are you going to go about controlling it? Are you going to do it God's way with the fruits of the Spirit? Or are you going to do it our own way, the works of the flesh?
That's it.
And based upon which one you consume, that's what's going to come out. And hate may be coming at you, but if you are responding in the fruits of fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness,
love your enemies,
grace, mercy, it's all going to come out, right?
Yeah.
But if you're responding via that flesh, we all been there. We all know it's going to come out.
Well, and here's the thing, right? Like the problem is that we've conditioned ourselves to do it that way for so long that when God gets a hold of us, it's really true. And it tells us in scriptures that there is this fight, and it tells us in Galatians when it talks about the fruit of the Spirit and the works of the flesh, it says that there's this fight between the two. There's this tug of war.
Yeah. And Paul talks about it.
Yeah.
Consistently.
So like, just let go. And that's the hardest part, right? Like,
yes.
I remember, and I've said this story before too. A guy called one time and he was struggling with alcohol. And he's like, man, I got to stop this. He's like, it's tearing apart my family. It's tearing apart all this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, dude. I said, but you got to give it to God. I said, you just you want to control the situation. You want to do this. You want to do this. And I said, but you need to let go and give it to God. He's like, but I can't, because I can't lose control. Like, I feel like I need to control it. And I said, how's that working out for you, dude? Obviously he's on the phone with me because it's not working out so well for him. Right. And it's like, hey, if we got this tug of war, it's not even a fight. I'm just going to let it go.
Yes.
I'm not going to fight it. And like, when we talk about how do I let God handle these situations for me? Right. Obviously, like, you can't just be like, well, I'm not going to do anything. Like, God's got, no. Like, there's a balance, right? Like, there are things, like, here's the thing. The Apostle Paul went and preached the gospel. Like, it didn't just like magically happen. Right. He was in accordance to, all right, God, I'm going to take the next step forward. Same thing for us.
It's just what you just said. So he would just take the next step forward, right? So he'd take a step in faith. And in that faith, God would show up and bless his step of faith.
Yeah.
And then he's like, whoa, that kind of grows your faith. And then, so now I'm going to take another step of faith in obedience, because that's what faith builds. It builds my obedience to the Lord. And now I'm taking these steps of faith a lot faster, because there's no more doubt or concern when you start to build up these acts of faith that the Lord keeps blessing and moving you on. And
because you can look back and be like, look at where he's taken me. Look at what he's done.
But you cannot, and trust me, people, when I tell you this, you cannot even begin to start this process until you surrender.
Yeah.
If you don't surrender, it's impossible. It's impossible to start until you surrender. And you have got to absolutely surrender. You got to have your stupid friend come to you and say, do you want to be healed?
Do you want to be made well?
I read it the other day too. It was, and I was like, and 100%, like, allow the Lord to answer your question. What do you mean, do I want to be made well? Yeah. Do you want to be made well?
Yeah, because think about this, right? That whole passage is in John, and there's this dude, he's crippled, and like all these people are waiting at this pool for this like weird thing to happen. Yeah, pool of Bethesda. It's like this weird thing to happen. The water like comes up and bubbles, and people that jumped in first, they got healed.
Because they believe that an angel came down and touched it.
Yeah. Stirred.
We don't know, stirred it, and we don't know one way or the other. But
yeah, it's weird. It's like, I can't explain that. Yes. Right. But here's the important part. Jesus comes up to this dude and he's like, hey, do you want to be made well? He's like, yeah, but every time I try to go to this water, like somebody jumps in before me and I can't get there. So you're making excuses. And Jesus poses a question. Do you want to be made well? Here's the thing. Like, that is a question for those that are listening. Do you want to be made well? Are you going to continue to hide behind this mask? Are you going to continue to hide behind these sets of adversities, right? Because like this dude was playing the victim card in a sense, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, yeah, I can't do it because every time someone comes, they beat me to it, and like I'm just crippled on this.
Because he didn't have anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he was saying.
Pretty much is ultimately what he's saying, right?
But the savior of the universe was standing right there, asking him if he wanted to be made well.
And he had to come to the place where it was like, yeah, I'm tired of this. Like, I don't want to be sick anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be sick anymore. Hey, guess what? Like, hey, what are the things that are plaguing you in your life? Mm-hmm. Gosh, man, like this isn't going well, and I have this going on, and I got this going on. Do you want to be made well? You have this mask on, and here's the thing: like, you might not think well, I don't even have a mask of salvation. Like I just got this. No, you got the mask of victimhood. Either way, that's your saving grace, because that's your false persona. That's
Right.
that false And guess what happens when you have this victimhood? You make other people feel sorry for you and all this other stuff. It's like, no, because that's what you're expecting to get, where your hope and helper is going to come
Right.
from. You have to get to that place where, yeah, I want to be made well. All right. So guess what? Move forward. Surrender.
That's the kicker.
I have nothing to hold on to. I have no excuses to hold on to. I have no crutch to lean on. I have, hey, you know what, God? You take control of my life.
In Christ alone, I place my trust and find my glory in the promise of the cross. Powerful.
Right? And when you take the mask off and you put that helmet of salvation, guess what? You recognize, yep, hey, there are things that I've done that I'm not proud of. There are things, and guess what? God's still forgiving you. You don't need to hide that. God forgives you for, and then we just talked about that, right? Like there are adversities that we have with individuals where we don't we haven't received forgiveness for our sins, right? And it's like, think of like in a marriage, maybe somebody's, cheated on their spouse, or maybe they've, whatever, they've lost their job, they've done whatever the case is. And they feel like, like these people, I can never, like the God of the universe forgives you. What does it matter about man?
Yeah. Yes. It's just difficult because we are here in each other's faces, right?
Yeah.
And it's a level of faith. It's a step of faith to say, okay, God of the universe, I'm going to trust you to move me along in this process.
So the biggest thing is that we're trying to protect is shame.
Yes.
Ultimately is shame. In Hebrews, and I should have prepped myself for this. In Hebrews, it says that Jesus took the cross, despising its shame.
Yes. Yes.
That was the most shameful thing.
Yes.
To have to go and walk that cross.
And he was the last person on earth that should have ever had to do that.
Yep. And guess what? He did that for you. He did that for me.
The shame.
And so if he bore my sins, my shame, why? Here's the thing. Why am I holding on to it? Like, put your burden down and just pick up the cross.
Yeah.
But you can't carry both, because you said it, right? You're like, hey, because we talked about it before. Like, hey, if you're going to pick something up, you're going to put the sword of the Spirit down or the shield of faith, right?
Put them both down.
Yeah, because, and let's just be honest, because that burden that we were carrying,
Yes,
that's a heavy sucker, dude.
Yes.
That's a heavy sucker. So there's no way you're going to be able to and pick
You're
up.
not just picking it up with one hand.
Nah, dude, you're going to drop both.
You're dropping the shield, you're dropping the sword, and
Yeah.
messing yourself all up.
Yeah, and like that song says, man, lay your burden down.
Yes.
You can't pick up the cross until you drop that burden. You can't wear the helmet of salvation and wear the mask of hypocrisy at the same time.
You cannot depend on the Lord if you are attempting to depend on yourself.
Correct.
Very much so.
You got anything else?
I do not, sir. Hi, Mama.
Well, in that case, we're still recording and it's good. So you want to pray us out?
I would love to. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for allowing us to come and preach to ourselves every Saturday that we could get together and do this, dear Lord. It's eye-opening. Your grace, your mercy, your love, the sacrifice that you provided to us, it's immeasurable, and it's humbling, and we want to thank you for it. Never forget it, and always be striving to put our faith and our trust in you, and receive your power, your your love, your grace, your mercy, and then pour it out on others, dear Lord. We are here. We are nothing but distributors. You are the manufacturer and we are the distributors, and we want to distribute the fruits of the Spirit, your fruits, and not the works of the flesh, dear Lord. We thank you and praise you in your name. Amen.
Amen.